Introduction. Hi guys, it's finally happened. You asked and I did it. So you got to my online workshop. Let it be online so far, but it's only the beginning and later we will be able to meet offline. It's just a small introduction to a whole series of online workshops. This video will become a great springboard for you in teaching food and tabletop product shooting. If you saw my videos in web before, you most likely question about how some of the elements was shot, which camera settings it was, what equipment was used there, and so on. Every day I receive tons of questions. Now it's time to answer most of them. That's why I'm here with you. I want to share my experience with you, and I hope that you can learn a lot. So, no matter where you are, no matter what camera you have, no matter what budget you have, it's gonna be some easy, simple steps that you can do to make your product or food shots looks like this. Style. Video commercials is a visual media and that's what they're for. The reason why we tell stories with photos. We learn the visual language of the cinema, learn with 100+ years using the specific lens means, and then make a better video. Before starting any shooting, you need to decide style and mood of the final sequence. Decide what kind of language you want to set to a video. Because all the other parameters of the future project depend on style you choose. If you don't understand what style the future video will be, then you won't be able to choose the right camera, equipment, lights, actors and prop. You will simply rush about in your thoughts and try to collect everything and a little more for the shooting. And as a result, the budget will be bloated and you will not earn anything on it, or the client will see that you don't have clear understanding of what are you doing and will simply refuse to cooperate with you. And in order to not to waste time on a pointless discussion of unnecessary details on pre-production, first of all you need to understand what your final video will visually look like. To do this, you need to be watched about direction your future video should be. An excellent solution in choosing visual style of a future video is to creating the mood board. To do this, I often use the Pinterest website. You can find there a lot of different pictures. This site quite accurately understands what style you need and offers you similar images just in few requests. Next, you can save your favorite image to your album of this topic. The variety of pictures of this website can easily help you to find the visual style which you want to shoot your future video. Then, after saving and sorting the selected images to your folder on the hard drive, you can create the first collage or mood board. This will be our fundamental visual solution and style for the future video. It is a simplified version of a mood board in which there are no textual descriptions. It is needed for personal understanding of the visual solution and for the client, so that he can also see what his future advertisement will visually be. It is also important at the initial stage of pre-production to visit the location where you will shoot and carefully check it. You can do this at different times of the day in order to understand how natural light shines the room through the windows in the morning, then at lunch and at sunset. It's necessary to choose the best time for shooting when the light most successfully illuminates the shooting location. Also meet client at the location. Ask him to tell you about the important essence of his place. You need to know what details to focus on. You'll find out the best way to highlight the shooting location if client need it. Having visited the location in advance, you can take pictures of the interior, choosing framing and angles that you will shoot. These pictures can already be used in future detailed storyboard. Photos can be taken by standard mobile phone camera. Also, you can use mobile applications viewfinder. Using mobile viewfinder app, you can choose camera and lenses which you will shoot your future project. It will help you accurately frame in the image and more clearly understand the location. There are a lot of free apps to help you with this, like Lenser, paid and more professional Cardage app. As soon as you decide on this, you will be able to understand what you will need on set in order to fully bring ideas you've seen to life. If you're not paying attention to the style of your future video as a director, then you're literally only doing 25% on a job. Location. Usually, you will have two options in choosing a shooting location for food or tabletop. The first is full in the studio and the second one in the client's location. This is also an important issue in the production process because if you are shooting in the studio, then most likely you will be responsible for the props and ingredients for the shooting. And in some cases, the client will not even be present at the shooting. So be prepared in this case to budget for cost of ingredients in case of food photography, and of course the time you will spend looking for exactly what you need. Of course you can shoot at home, but in this case be ready for some difficulties at the shooting. It's a common situation for home filming when not enough space and you have to spend a lot of time for lights and camera setup. It's especially felt if you use large softboxes and octagons. In some cases you will have to cover windows to block unwanted light. Be ready to constantly trip over wires and unwanted light off because of the small space. And sometimes even a flood can happen to your place if you decide to film something creative there. But there is a positive side of filming at home, it's time. If you're filming on your equipment and don't rent it, then you will not be limited in time and will be able to experiment as much as you want. And as you know, more experiments, better and more beautiful future video will be. In the case when the client is ready to take you to his territory in a restaurant or at the production plant or someone else, it usually turns out that he already has all the necessary ingredients for food photography, for example. But this is not always the great way, because in this case you can get high quality to taste the ingredients, but not beautiful and not attractive looking ingredients for the video. So in this case you need to be as pedantic as possible. I'll say that ingredients for food photography are your actors, who should look great and attract the attention of the viewer. Of course, all these questions can be decided for you by the food stylist in the case of food photography, or property props master in case of production tabletop shooting. Food stylist and props master. Of course, you can take on the functions of the food stylist or property/props master, which I did in a lot of my works, but this is rather not the rule but an exception. Therefore, I strongly recommend that everyone expand their communication in this industry and meet food stylists and props masters, because they can save tons of your time and effort. Food stylist for me is some kind of time saver at the shooting, because only this person can create a beautiful composition of ingredients and props. If you even try once to shoot food video with a regional chef, you will understand that he is great at the kitchen and very professional at his job. But in the video it looks like some kind of mess and dirty. That's why you should invite the food stylist to your shooting, because this person can be for you the actor and make for you exactly that cut that you need, or do some move in the frame that will be looked much more cinematic. Food stylist's second job is to make for you cinematic movements in the frame with ingredients. But you need to be sure that your food stylist is ready for that. While you're setting up your camera or light up the location, food stylist will create for you necessary composition for shooting. And when you are ready to shoot, he will help you with props directly in the frame. Professional props master always have different tools for working directly in the frame. It will help you to focus on specific takes in a future video. My advice to you is to work with props master and food stylist in a single team. Close teamwork with props master will give you interesting shots. Props selection. If you are going to do it by yourself, I advise you to choose the most beautiful and colorful ingredients. that in the camera will look juicy and attractive. I mean food filming. In addition to the ingredients, you have to purchase a different table props. I mean different knives, plates, cutlery, pots and pans and so on. It will have to be done even if you're shooting at the client's location in a restaurant. The fact is that in the kitchen of restaurants, chefs' knives and tools are professional, but unfortunately not photogenic. This is usually green or red plastic handles of cutting knives, multicolored plastic cutting boards, scratched pans and so on. As a result, on the video, due to such a props, you get a feeling of the something not aesthetic. Therefore, I often stare off the supermarket for different knives and pans and sometimes buy them. I even have favorite knives. One of them is a knife with hole all over the blade, which I often use in different food videos. In general, I have already accumulated a couple of boxes with props for food photography in which there are many different necessary things, starting from serving plates to a gas burner for preparing hot dishes. All of this is upgraded and increases over time. For product tabletop shooting, it's hard to predict and advise anything because everything will depend on your idea. In some cases you will need fabric, in another case you will need an aquarium with ink, ice, flowers and so on. Choosing props for future shooting is depend on the product you are filming. You need to select the same colors of backgrounds and props as advertised product in the future commercial. For example, before shooting perfumes, decide which colors will more accurately represent its flavor. If it's floral aroma, then choose flowers that match it. If you need fabric in the frame, just in case, take different options and choose the one that looks better at your shot. Also, don't forget about the physical properties of props. How transparent it is or how it reflects and refracts light will depend on whether you can fulfill the intended effect at the video. Denser fabric will be less transparent than a light fabric. It will be heavy and will not fly so easily. All the scenery around the advertised product should focus on it, the attention of the viewer. The product and the used props should look harmoniously next to each other. If you do everything right, then the final video will please you and your client. Camera and equipment. So we got the most frequently asked question: which camera, lens and equipment to choose for food or tabletop shooting, which camera I'm using and so on. All I can say about this: if you have the opportunity to rent a professional camera and optics with film light and you understand how to use it and how it works, just do it. But if you don't have this opportunity, use what you have or what you can be given to a friend. The big myth of filmmaking is more expensive camera, better the video. I would say you don't necessarily need expensive camera, but it's definitely helpful. For me, choosing a camera has always been an important part in picture quality. High dynamic range means a lot. So for myself, I chose Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K as soon as it went on sale. I haven't been interested in DSLR cameras for a long time because of the lower dynamic range, low bitrate and codecs which they shoot. But based on the fact that you have a DSLR camera and you need to use it, I advise you to shoot in the highest possible bit rates and with the most acceptable color profile, which will increase the dynamic range of your camera. This is how you can get the maximum image quality from your camera. An important setting for the camera is the ability to shoot in slow motion. In 95% cases of foot or tabletop shooting, I had to shoot at 60 frames per second or 120. It's just the maximum highest bit values that I can get in 4K or 2.6K by my camera. Also, don't forget that on many DSLR cameras, when the number of frames per second increases, the bitrate will be decreased or the image will be cropped. Be careful with this, because it degrades the quality of the picture itself. Your take will be slowed down, but the quality will be worse. Therefore, I always try to keep some kind of balance in this case, and sometimes I have to compromise. Optics are welcomed as sharp as possible, bright with high aperture values. The most popular lens for me in the last 2 years is Sigma 9035 1.8 art and Samyang 85 1.5 sign. Recently, over 24 probe lenses joined these lenses, making a unique view. Whatever equipment you're filming, always pay attention to its cleanliness. Be ready for the fact that you often have to wipe and clean the optics and the camera itself. Because in food photography you will work with flour, spices, water and various other loose and wet substances. Sooner or later all of this will drop to you and your camera. Stock up on various cleaning products to wipe your optics. Air duster for fine and coarse dust. For each individual item of your equipment, select a separate microfiber or will explode on your set. You can easily remove all the dirt and continue filming. Everything gets complicated when you need to shoot smoother and more complex and well-stabilized frames. Here it all depends on financial and physical capabilities. It's enough for someone to set up the tripod and he will be pleased with this result. I have a long thing switch to shoot more dynamic frames using slider and gimbal. I like when there is a dynamic in the frame which will bring cinematic feel of the final clip. Of course, the project completely shot from a tripod, but it's always more difficult to do it in them, because when the camera is locked, it's necessary to create the maximum possible movement in the frame itself. And for this, completely different devices are already being made. You will need to come up with the different path of the object in the frame and make them move as you need. This has always been a headache for me, but when you approach the project creatively, then everything turns out as it should. Let's take a closer look at DIY motion control and find out what we can do our own hands with max result. First of all, it's rotating stand that you can buy at the nearest IKEA. This stand is needed for items rotation in frame. Of course, you can choose motorized stand, but you can start with this very simple and cheap. It's enough to set up your item on it and spin it at needed speed. It will make your image more dynamic and alive. We can show the item from different sides in one take. And if you add camera movement, it will give more dynamic and attract attention. Try adding some more dynamic objects to the frame that you can have chosen as the props for this take. As a result, you will see how a seemingly static frame come alive. Rotating stand helps shooting closer and accurate when you need to show product essence and details. If necessary, to emphasize the meaning of what's going on in the frame, you can add a little bit fire. It will give the viewer an understanding that subject in the frame is hot or it's being cooked in hot temperature. By the way, you can make the object rotate using regular light stand. Sometimes you have to go beyond and build something of your own.
So, the shooting in an aquarium, I decided to rotate a bottle of perfume in the water. I used an old electric focus system which has made on a 3D printer a long time ago. Just in an unusual solution, I decided to do something different. The motor was gripped to the light stand and bottle was fastened to it by gaff tape. An essential element in food and product filming is levitation. It's a common technique in tabletop shooting. It gives the future video the necessary lightness and invites the viewer to look at usual items by the new angle. I try to implement each of my product or food videos with these shots. Items levitation in the frame is achieved by different ways, but today we will touch on two main options. Bouncy background is the first and most commonly used item for it. It's fixed on both sides by heavy loads and space is left from the bottom in the center so that it can be heated from behind. You can stick any color PVC background and this backdrop to match the overall style of the video. The items should be decomposed so that it's most scatters at the moment of impact from below. It comes back as to the question of what physical properties this or other items possess. It's necessary to understand the weight, flowability, viscosity and other properties of the items being shot in order to understand exactly how it will behave at the most important moment for us, at the levitation time. Using regular bouncy backdrop, be ready for the fact that you will have to make a lot of attempts to have a right and perfect take. The fact is that every time items will fly up to different heights and fall out the focus of your lens. Overall, everything will depend on how hard you hit this backdrop. In order to more accurately control the item's levitation, you can choose the second option and design jump machine. You can build it using aluminum rails or wooden boards. I made it out of aluminum. This option seemed to me more reliable. Jump machine, it's a box in which the bottom hangs freely. This bottom is attached to the top of this box with rubber bands or springs. If you set up items on its bottom, pull it back and release, then the items will fly up. It's the basics of jump machine. All the power of throwing items up will depend on the quantity of rubber bands or springs installed on the jump machine. And of course, don't forget that you can always give even more dynamics in the frame if you add camera movement. Also, if you are working with liquids or wet items, you can use the tray as a platform for tossing. In this case, everything will depend on your skills or skills of your food stylist or props master. Improvisation on the set is welcomed. You can always take an unusual shot using regular kitchen tools in the restaurant and fire. Having collected several iron trays and letting the fire go there, you can show how fire is lit inside the oven. The main thing is that it visually looks like. Sometimes you have to work carefully on the props and prepare it for exceptional take. For example, cut off the bottle's bottom and show from the inside how the liquid spills out of it. I tried different ways to cut off the bottom of the bottle. I tried all the ways from the web, but the bottle always cracked and broke. In the end, I just cut off its bottom on the turning lathe. It works at first time, and since then I have been using this method only. In general, design and build of simple DIY motion control isn't an easy task. It's good to have friends with their workroom. You can come up with an idea, but it will need to be implemented correctly in order to get what you previously planned on set. So be ready to spend a lot of time on it. Don't forget that on set you need employees and crew who will help you with setup of your DIY things you've built before. It will be difficult to handle it alone. Unique things need to be shown with unique perspective and points of view. So all of it works great with probe lens. Laowa Probe 24mm not only provides a unique point of view, but it's also waterproof. So you can be not afraid to experiment with this lens and come up with ideas especially for it. If you are not lazy and do such things, then your videos will stand out from the many ordinary videos in the web. Clients will see the uniqueness in your videos and will want to work with you. Take a look in your toolbox and try to find something interesting there. Use a drill or electric screwdriver to make the item spin on a video. Try to be creative in designing unique movement of items in the frame.
Light. Light is always not enough. With this rule, I always preparing for every shoot. Therefore, I have different light sources with different power output and different proposals. I prefer to use LED light, and only 2 light fixtures are fluorescent in my light setup. But I use fluorescent light in extreme conditions, when access to my other light sources is limited and I can't use them because of the dimensions of the room where I'm filming. That's why I'm grouping these lights in some different places. I don't like hard light, so I'm using different diffusers. For example, light dome from aperture, or a couple sheets of frost film, or regular diffuser from reflector. Using diffused lights gives the picture more natural and organic look, as opposite to hard directed harsh light. Also, I like to use practical light when shooting at the kitchens and restaurants. This is the light sources that are placed directly in the frame and create unique atmosphere of the place when you're shooting. So, as a practical, I'm using small LED panels from aperture or different fairy lights, candles, and so on. In case when you're shooting reflective surfaces, but watch out of the messy reflections and make your light source larger and softer, and try to move a little bit far from your object. Unlike shooting in the interior, studio shooting is much easier because studios have high ceilings and a lot of free space for setup your light and movement with camera. That's why I prefer to rent studios for filming. You will always find there easy access to plugging your light and placing C-stands with flags and diffusers. Studio is the best place for experiments with light. Also in studio there is an opportunity to immediately rent a more professional light. You will not spend your time for renting and transporting it from rental house. Situation with renting professional light is the same as renting professional camera or other film equipment. If you have enough knowledge about professional cinema lighting, then you will not have a problem with this. But if you are fresh in this industry, you need to check possibility of hiring gaffer. Gaffer is professionally versed in film lighting, and he will help you to choose and arrange it at the shooting day. It will certainly increase the project budget, but it will greatly affect the final result and improve it several times. If you want to grow as a professional in the future and improve the quality of your project, then you will definitely have to work with gaffer and rental. You need to know it doesn't matter how good your camera is, it doesn't matter how good your lights are. If you don't have the stuff in front of the camera that's worth looking at, then why are you shooting at?
Let's quickly go over some of the lighting techniques and setups I'm using usually at the shootings. The most basic and simple is using one fixture with soft light and reflector as a bounce. In this case it's aperture 120D with light dome as a key light. On the opposite side of the key light is the fill light. All this light does is just fill the shadows given by the key light. Typical way to use the fill light is to place it on the opposite side of the key light while dimming down the brightness, so don't flatten out the face of your talent or his hands. Sometimes as a fill light you can use regular reflector board utilizing the key light bouncing back at the subject. You can use silver or white sides of the reflector board. This light setup can be rotated and key light moved at the top, it's called top light, and metallic surface of the kitchen's table will bounce key light and make it less contrast. At the next setup you can add one more light source and set it as a backlight. Moreover, the main key light shouldn't remain unchanged in its place. It's always on its place. Backlight will make the image more contrast and emphasize the silhouettes and details in the frame. If you are shooting a wide scene with several actors in the frame, you can add more light fixtures as a key light to illuminate a larger area. It will be more flexible in camera movements and points of view. In more sophisticated light setups, number of light sources should be increased. In this case, 6 lighting fixtures are used. Twin Teletech lights through the large diffuser create the main key light. One halogen flow light with half frost is a backlight. Aperture 120D with Fresnel modifier plus half frost set as rim light. The second flow light with half frost illuminates the background of the kitchen. And the last light source, aperture 300D, is outside the window. It creates a sunny day outside the window and highlights the greens in the window. Also, sometimes I set the backlight with the diffusion as I did in this case. It gives shadows more softness, but at the same time the main key light remains in place. Rim light and backlight are also added. Moreover, the background light in this case works perfectly, thanks to the shiny steel surfaces at the kitchen. In some cases, I also set trim light softer using large soft boxes. I used here aperture 120D with the light dome. And in the case of the fabric in the frame, I made a lighting setup with the backlight and the rim light soft. Using light dome with 120D and half frost with flow light. And in another scene, rim light, even double flow light. All this was done so the black fabric was better lighted and it looks much way cleaner and softer at the video. Soft boxes at the both sides are probably the most important part of the light setup in product shooting for me. In some cases, for more accurate light control, I have to cut off the light. This usually happens when I create a darker and contrast image. As a flex, I use black foam sheets purchased in a regular office supply store. Even when shooting in a small tight space, I'm trying to create the depth of image using light. Here in the brazier I set a backlight, double aperture Moran M9, and thanks to this I got a good rim light. If you are limited in high quality film light fixtures, then you can always use natural daylight. Of course, daylight is the highest quality light in the world. Don't neglect it, because large bright window can become the main key light. Using a little bit cutted light from the open door as a backlight. Of course, the light intensity can be dimmed and changed by the ND film or the frost film. You can also combine natural sunlight with light fixtures for your artistic needs.
Shooting day. Every shooting day depends on how you do the pre-production. An important point in the filming is the shooting plan or storyboard. It's necessary to develop timing plan because every change on set takes your time from the shooting process. You need to start scheduling all these things by how many people you need it. Even if you are shooting in a studio, you need to understand that each move of equipment with light between the scenes also takes up most of the time. You need to understand the sequence of scenes that you shoot and how to expose the light, because the changing of the light between the scenes also takes up most of the time. Everything about time and planning for that time and trying to get the most shots within a day, understanding how long it takes to set up whole scene, understanding how long it takes to get the food set up by the food stylist, you're going to get more done in a day. If you planned each frame that you need to shoot and you're sure that everything will go exactly according to the plan, you are confident in yourself and in your assistants, then the shooting will be excellent in timing and you and your client will be happy with the final result. But often it happens that something starts to go wrong and the overall picture begins throwing off. Suppose you see that the chef doesn't do what you need and doesn't fulfill the tasks you set, or the ink in the tank doesn't spread as you thought. As a result, whole process drags on. At such moment, you need to go beyond the scope of your plan and improvise and find the new solutions and come up with the new ideas then you can implement right on the set. To easily improvise and come up with interesting ideas, you need to know how different materials behave when mixing, heating or tossing. You should be very well known about the physical properties of the items and props which will work. Sometimes you have to glue the shrimp to the tray so that they are not washed off by the stream of water and remain motionless. And in some cases it's useful for you to know how this or that fabric behaves in how transparent it is. In general, shooting food or product is not only camera or equipment, it's also specific practical knowledge about the physical properties of objects that you shoot. Editing. Editing shouldn't cause big difficulties if all the previous steps you set perfectly and you have a clear vision of the final clip. You should have the short story with your own narration and development of events, and all sequence should not confuse. You need to make kind of intrigue and make the viewer watch your video to the end. And you need to do this not by the regular plugins with transitions and presets, but by the correctly edited story. As a rule, the basis for the editing starts at the pre-production, when you decide how your future video will look like, what plans you will shoot and with what framing.
Usually I don't show step by step the whole story that I want to edit and show as a final clip. I mix it. I know that at the end it's necessary to show pack shot with different dishes that we have cooked and shot before. So I have some footage with some of these dishes. But I will not try to show first the preparation of the dish and then another. I will edit the video so that all these dishes are prepared in parallel and gradually. To begin with, I mentally divide the entire timeline into 3 parts. In the first part, I'll show ingredients themselves and its initial cutting and some preparation for cooking. In the second part, it's already possible to show how these dishes directly begin to be cooked. The ingredients are mixed together, boiled and put it in the oven, for example. And in the third part, I already show the final part of cooking, the last touch and serving. And everything ends with a pack shot with all variety dishes. I don't use standard plugins and transitions for editing, and I don't welcome with this. In order for the video to be well edited and look harmonious, I try to make in-camera transitions at the shooting itself. I manage the sequence of events on the timeline when I'm filming. That is, I initially shooting edited sequence. In first 2 events I used speed ramp and transform in order to interest the viewer from the beginning. Both takes were shot at the 120 frames per second. So I accelerated these events at the beginning and in the end. In the middle, when for example tomato flies, I slow it down. And then accelerate it again. Between cucumber and tossed tomato there is a micro frame about how the tomato is cut. And so that everything looks smooth. I started the next event using transform zoom and gradually returned to regular resolution. And after just one event, I again do the same thing using transform and speed ramp. Because having shown once an interesting trick, it must be repeated at least once. This is necessary so that a similar style of video editing is remembered by the viewer and he is used to this style. These two events consciously sat behind each other because they work perfectly together. The first event with fall of the tomato on a knife is artistic in itself and simply shows that the chef cuts it. The second event is already practical and specifically shows that chef rubs tomato on a grater. Further, immediately the event ending this action follows, and which everything that happens is seen from the side. We showed it at the beginning, one artistic shot that has nothing to do with real cooking, and right away the shot is followed by the real and natural cooking shot. Now remember the principle of repeating interesting editing techniques, and then we repeat it. The first event with cutting of the top of the paper is artistic, and the next one is practical and natural. And by the camera movement from left to right, we smoothly move to another event with a glass filling. And a bit speed ramp. A little later, in events with onions, I even decided not to show the practical shots with slicing it. I just showed 2 art takes. It is guided by such principles that I edit my food and product videos. The general mood in the video is created by the music, which is the main part of the editing process. Music shouldn't get out of the picture, it should enhance the mood of the viewer and emphasize important parts of the video. In order not to get into awkward situations with copyright and to protect yourself, I advise you to use paid music search services such as Artlist, Epidemic Sound and so on. Moreover, there are constantly held promotions and free months of use. Sometimes editing is not limited only to cutting frames and overlaying music. It happens that you need to reinforce some moments in the video. You have to use sound design. This is especially true for food filming because it's in the food video that I want not only to look at beautiful pictures but also to hear with what sound pasta falls into a boiling pot, or how the fire burns and the coals crack into the barbecue. I used to record sounds already at home using Zoom H6, but the waves caused foiling, and after I had accumulated a rather large base, stopped doing this and used that what I have. Also at Artlist there is a new sound effects service where you can find big library with different categories of sound. Summary and conclusions. Don't forget to take stock in drawing conclusions after projects. What I mean, after each project, don't be lazy, just take paper, pencil and write down the pros and cons of each past project. Summarize the work done. Ask yourself questions. What happened and what didn't? This way you can understand where your weak points are and how to fix them next time. And with each shooting, you will achieve all the best results. Conclusion.
The main task of my course of food and tabletop filming is not only to share all my knowledge and teach you how to take beautiful pictures and create beautiful projects and do everything technically perfect. It's important for me to teach you how to analyze information creatively and correctly, find answers to your questions on your own when I'm not around. I want to discover in you a talent for creating your own unique projects. This video tutorial is just a small springboard for you into a big world of food photography and tabletop shooting, by which I will guide you by the hand and reveal all the secrets of each stage. I will share with you my experience and teach you to think creatively. See you next time on my in-depth course, Food and Tabletop Shooting. Remember to practice and stay creative.